It all started with a conversation I never expected to turn into something life-altering. My best friend Jake and I have known each other since middle school. We've been through breakups, job losses, bad haircuts, you name it. If there's one person I thought I understood, it was him. And he always had my back. No questions asked. A couple of months ago, Jake started dating this girl named Emily. He met her through work, and from the way he talked about her, you'd think she walked on water. Smart, funny, gorgeous, and apparently the only woman who had ever gotten him. That's what he said. For weeks, I heard nothing but stories about how perfect she was, how this time was different, how he could really see a future. And I was happy for him. After all the heartbreaks he'd been through, he deserved someone solid. But then came the night everything took a turn. We were hanging out at his place, just a chill Friday night, and after a couple of beers, Jake started talking about trust. Not in a paranoid way, but like he was trying to get something off his chest. He said Emily was amazing, almost too amazing. Then he hit me with it. He asked if I'd be willing to test her. His exact words were, "I just want to know for sure. If she's really down for me, I know it's messed up, but you're the only one I'd trust with this." I laughed at first. I thought he was joking. But he wasn't. He was dead serious. He didn't want me to sleep with her or anything extreme, just flirt, throw some bait, and see how she reacted. I told him it was a bad idea. That if he had doubts, maybe he should talk to her, not trick her. But Jake wouldn't let it go. Said it would give him peace of mind. Said he'd never forgive himself if he didn't know. Eventually, I gave in, not because I thought it was right, but because I didn't want him to go to someone else. I figured I'd keep it light, harmless even. A joke. A weird favor. Something we'd laugh about later. The next time I saw Emily was at a group brunch. We'd met briefly before, but this time I made an effort to talk more. She was chill. Not overly flirty, not standoffish either. Just normal. Friendly. Jake was sitting right there, smiling like everything was perfect. I felt like a jackass even trying to play this game. Over the next week, I followed her on Instagram. She followed back. I liked a couple of her stories, casual stuff. A photo of a sunset, her coffee, whatever. I replied once with, "You've got serious photography skills," which wasn't even a lie. She replied, "Haha, thanks." I just point and shoot. No flirtation. No emojis. Just a polite reply. I told Jake, "Dude," she passed. "Don't worry about it." He asked me to keep going. Said people don't reveal their true selves in one reply. I hated that he didn't trust her. I hated more that I was becoming part of this weird scheme. I escalated slightly, started asking more personal questions through DMs. "What do you do to unwind after work?" Stuff like that. She answered, but nothing inappropriate. She told me she paints sometimes, likes audiobooks, and sometimes just watches trashy reality shows. I responded with harmless jokes, mild compliments. She'd smile it off and redirect. I even saw them together a few times during all this. Double dates, game nights. Watching her with Jake, laughing, leaning into him, I started to feel like an absolute piece of garbage. She clearly cared about him, and she never once initiated anything inappropriate. She was kind to me, sure, but never out of line. After about 2 weeks, I told Jake again, "It's done. You've got nothing to worry about." He finally seemed satisfied. Told me I was a legend. Thanked me for having his back. That should have been the end. But about a week later, I got a text from Emily. Just 5 words. "Can we talk? Just us." I stared at it for a while. My stomach twisted. I didn't respond right away. I tried to convince myself she just wanted to clear the air. Maybe she picked up on something weird and wanted to set boundaries. Either way, I knew I owed her that conversation. After all, she'd unknowingly been dragged into a loyalty test she never consented to. We met up at a quiet coffee shop. She was already sitting there when I arrived, a half-drunk iced latte in front of her, and a look that wasn't angry, but wasn't exactly friendly either. "I'm not stupid," she said. "I know something's been going on. You've been different." I tried to play dumb for a second, but she wasn't having it. "You've been fishing. Testing me. I don't know if it was your idea or Jake's, but I need to know why." I didn't have it in me to lie. I admitted Jake asked me to test her, that he had trust issues, that I didn't want to do it but didn't know how to say no. She sat in silence for a minute. Then she said, I thought he was different. I thought this relationship would be built on trust. I would have passed the test without even knowing I was in it. But now that I do, I'm not sure I even want to. I apologized, genuinely. I told her I felt awful, that it was a mistake. She looked at me and said, It's not just Jake I'm disappointed in. It's you too. You're supposed to be his best friend. I nodded. I knew she was right. Every part of it felt wrong. The guilt was eating me alive, but at the same time, something else was happening. I was starting to think about her more than I should. About how she carried herself. The way she handled confrontation, not with drama, but with grace. It made me notice things I hadn't before. Not just her looks, but the way she thought, how she moved through the world. I tried to bury it. I told myself it was just guilt, or maybe admiration. But it kept creeping in. The following days, I kept my distance. We didn't talk. Jake had no idea we'd met up. He was happy planning dates, talking about a weekend getaway. Meanwhile, I was spiraling, stuck between my loyalty to him and this strange, unexpected connection I couldn't shake. Then Emily messaged me again. This time, she asked if we could just talk like normal people. No games, no secrets. She said she needed clarity, wanted to understand if everything she was feeling was real or a reaction to betrayal. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't even sure what I was feeling anymore. But I said yes. And that's where things started to go from complicated to dangerous. She didn't waste time. The moment we sat down, she looked me dead in the eye and asked if I had feelings for her. I didn't answer at first. I tried to deflect, asked her why she was really there. But she held her ground, said if I was going to be honest, now was the time. I told her I didn't know, that it was all a blur, that none of this was supposed to happen. She said she felt something too, but it confused her. Said she didn't want to feel this way about her boyfriend's best friend. She didn't like that she was angry at Jake, but also somehow drawn to me. She said she hated herself for it. I told her I hated myself too. We agreed to stop talking outside of group settings. We told ourselves it was just a weird moment, born from awkward circumstances. We told ourselves it wouldn't happen again. But it did. It started small. A glance across the room during a game night. A moment alone in the kitchen while grabbing drinks. Little things. Nothing anyone else would notice. But we noticed. Every time. She texted me one night out of the blue. Just said, I can't sleep. I should have ignored it, but I didn't. I asked what was keeping her up. She said everything. The test. The trust. The guilt. We talked for hours. Not flirtatious, not romantic. Just real. She told me about how Jake got jealous over little things. How he joked about not trusting people, but sometimes it didn't feel like a joke. How she wanted to believe he'd grow out of it, but part of her wasn't sure. I told her I never meant for this to happen. That I never thought of her like that until I did. There was a pause. A long one. Then she said, Me too. After that night, something shifted. I couldn't stop thinking about her. I tried to stay busy, tried to avoid her, but she was everywhere. I saw her with Jake, and instead of feeling happy for him like I used to, I felt jealous. And ashamed of that jealousy. One night, we were all watching a movie at Jake's place. Halfway through, I got up to grab something from the kitchen. Emily followed. Said she needed water. We ended up talking again, just for a minute. I don't even remember what was said. But I remember how close we were standing. The tension was unreal. Later that week, she asked if we could meet, just once, to clear the air. I told her it was a bad idea. She said she needed closure. I said fine. We met at a park. Walked a bit. Didn't talk much at first. Then she stopped walking, looked at me, and said, I haven't told Jake anything. I won't. But I need to be honest with myself. I like you. I wish I didn't. But I do. I told her I felt the same. That I'd tried everything to shut it down. That I didn't want to ruin everything, especially Jake. But it was there whether we liked it or not. We didn't kiss. Not then. But the silence between us said everything. After that, we stopped pretending. We didn't act on it, not physically. But emotionally, we were already way over the line. We texted almost every night. Deep stuff. Philosophy, dreams, family, insecurities. Things she said she couldn't talk to Jake about because he always shrugged it off or changed the subject. I became her outlet. She became mine. We never said we were in love, but it was becoming harder to deny. Then one night it happened. We kissed. It was late. We were sitting in my car after one of those just talking meetups. I said something dumb. She laughed. Then it got quiet. She looked at me, and I knew we were seconds away from doing the one thing we said we wouldn't do. I should have pulled away. I didn't. The kiss was brief. Soft. But it broke everything. She pulled back and immediately said, "This was a mistake." I agreed. We both sat there, stunned. Then she opened the door, said, "We can't do this," and walked off. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, heart racing, sick to my stomach. The guilt hit harder than ever. I had betrayed the one person who trusted me the most. And for what? A kiss that only proved how far things had gone. The next morning, I considered telling Jake everything. I picked up my phone more than once, drafted texts, deleted them. I didn't know what would be worse, destroying his relationship or admitting I was the one who tore it apart. I didn't hear from Emily for days. No texts. Nothing. Jake, on the other hand, was in a great mood. Said he had big plans for their future. Said he wanted to propose. I almost dropped my coffee. He said he needed my help picking a ring. That he wanted me to be there when he asked. Said, "You've been with us since day one, bro. I want you to witness the next chapter." I smiled like it didn't feel like a knife in the chest. That same night, Emily messaged me. She said she needed to see me. I told her it wasn't a good idea. She said it couldn't wait. We met at her place. She looked exhausted. Said she hadn't been sleeping. Said she tried to pretend everything was fine, but it wasn't. She told me she couldn't marry someone she didn't trust. That Jake's loyalty test broke something in her. That even if she loved him, something fundamental had shifted. And then she said the words I didn't want to hear. "I'm going to break up with him." I asked if it was because of me. She said no. Said it was because of everything. The test. The lies. The cracks that were already there before I ever stepped in. She said what happened between us might have sped things up, but it wasn't the root cause. Then she added, "I need to be alone for a while. I'm not choosing you. I'm not choosing anyone. I just need space." I nodded. It made sense, but it still hurt. She said she didn't want Jake to hate me. That if he found out, it would destroy him. And she didn't want to be the reason he lost his best friend, too. So she asked me not to say anything. Said she'd handle the breakup gently. No drama. She told me goodbye that night. For real this time. No promises. No future plans. Just goodbye. I went home feeling like I'd just lost two people in one night. A few days later, Jake showed up at my place. His eyes were red. He didn't say much at first. Just stood in the doorway, holding a beer, like he didn't know why he was even there. Then he said, "She left me." I didn't know what to say. He sat down on the couch, ran a hand through his hair, and said, "She said she wasn't happy. Said she needed to figure herself out." I didn't see it coming. He looked at me, eyes hollow, and asked, "Did you know she was going to leave me?" I froze. Everything was burning down, and I had no idea how to save any of it. I didn't answer him right away. My heart was pounding. I knew whatever I said next could shift everything. I looked him in the eyes and just said, "I had a feeling things weren't perfect between you two, but I didn't know she was going to end it." That was the truth, or at least part of it. He stared at me for a long time, like he was trying to decide if I was lying. Then he looked away, nodded slowly, and took a sip of his beer. Over the next week, Jake was quiet. Not his usual self. He stopped going out. Stopped responding in the group chat. He ghosted his weekend plans and called in sick to work once. I checked in, brought him food, stayed over a few times. He didn't talk much, but I could tell he appreciated the company. I kept thinking I'd tell him everything. Come clean. But every time I tried, I'd look at him, how broken he looked, and I'd back out. Emily didn't reach out again. True to her word, she disappeared, deleted her socials, moved out of her apartment. Mutual friends said she transferred to a different office branch a few cities over. I try not to check for updates, but I did. Late at night, when everything was quiet and I couldn't sleep, I'd scroll through old texts or photos, wondering if I'd done the right thing by letting her go. A month passed. Jake started to come back to life. He joked again. He met us for drinks. He even talked about dating eventually, though you could hear the hesitation in his voice. We never talked about Emily beyond a few passing mentions. He kept it vague. I kept it vaguer. Then came the night everything collapsed. We were drinking at his place, just the two of us, talking about stupid stuff. I thought we'd finally turned a corner. He looked relaxed, like he'd made peace with things. But then he turned to me and asked, "You ever have feelings for someone you shouldn't?" I didn't answer right away. My silence was probably louder than any response. He smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "I know you know," he said. "I'm not stupid." My stomach dropped. He stood up, walked over to the kitchen, then turned around and said, "I saw the messages. Not all of them, just enough. The night she left, she forgot to log out of her account on my laptop." I didn't say a word. "I didn't read everything," he continued. "Didn't need to. I saw enough to know you were talking behind my back. That it went deeper than just a friendship. I don't know if you slept with her. I don't even care at this point. What gets me is that it was you." I tried to explain. I said I never planned for it to happen, that I never crossed a physical line until after the relationship was already breaking apart, that Emily left because she wasn't happy, not because of me. But the words felt weak, hollow. He didn't yell, didn't throw anything. He just looked tired. "I trusted both of you," he said. "You were supposed to be the one person I didn't have to worry about." I told him I was sorry. Over and over. I told him I hated myself for what happened, that I wished I'd handled it differently, that if I could go back and undo it, I would. Every word was sincere, but none of it made a difference. He shook his head, walked to the door, and said, "I don't think I can ever look at you the same again." And then he left. After that night, everything changed. Mutual friends noticed the shift. The group dynamic cracked. People asked questions. I didn't answer. Neither did Jake. But the tension was obvious. Some people sided with him. Others stayed neutral. No one knew the full story, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. Jake blocked me on everything. Didn't respond to texts. I respected his silence. I didn't reach out again. I kept to myself for a while. Focused on work. Got back into the gym. Tried dating again, but nothing felt right. Not after everything. I wasn't just grieving the loss of a relationship that never fully existed. I was grieving my best friend. The one person who'd been constant since I was a kid. And I ruined it. One night, out of nowhere, I got a message. From Emily. It was short. Just said, "I heard he found out. I'm sorry." I didn't know what to say. I stared at it for a while, then finally replied, "It was always going to come out eventually." She said she never meant to disappear completely, but she thought it was the only way to protect everyone. She asked if we could talk. I said yes. We met at a small coffee shop out of town. The same one from before. She looked different. Older, maybe. More grounded. We sat for a long time in silence before either of us said anything. Then she finally spoke. "I think about you a lot," she said. "But every time I do, it's complicated." I told her I understood. I said I didn't blame her for walking away. That maybe that was the only right choice either of us made. She nodded. Then she asked, "Do you still feel it?" I didn't lie. I said yes. She said she did too. But she didn't know if that feeling came from something real or just the chaos we'd both lived through. She said she wasn't ready to try again. Maybe not for a long time. But she wanted me to know it wasn't all fake. That what happened between us wasn't just emotional fallout. Then she said goodbye again. This time with a soft smile. No promises. Just peace. I walked away feeling a strange calm. Not because everything was fixed, it wasn't, but because the truth was finally out. The lies, the hiding, the guilt, all of it had surfaced. And in a weird way, that honesty felt like a kind of freedom. I haven't seen Jake since. It's been months. Sometimes I think about reaching out, but I stop myself. I know it would only be for me, not for him. He deserves distance. Maybe someday we'll talk again. Maybe not. I'm learning to live with both possibilities. There are moments when I replay everything in my head. Wonder where it all went wrong. Maybe it was the second I agreed to the test. Maybe it was when I replied to that late-night message. Maybe it was when I kissed her. The truth is, it wasn't one moment. It was all of them. A chain of choices that led exactly where it had to. And now here I am. No best friend. No girl. Just a story I'll carry for the rest of my life. A lesson I won't forget. Not because it was dramatic. Not because it was tragic. But because it was real. And I was the one who made it that way. Time passed, but nothing ever really returned to how it was. The silence between Jake and me became permanent. I stopped expecting a message. Stopped hoping for a conversation. Some breaks are too deep to repair, and deep down, I knew this was one of them. I saw him once, unexpectedly, at a mutual friend's wedding. He was with someone new, laughing, smiling, looking comfortable in a way I hadn't seen him in a long time. Our eyes met just briefly. He didn't nod, didn't frown, just looked right through me and turned back to his date. That 1 second told me everything. He'd moved on, not just from Emily but from me too. I wasn't part of his world anymore. I stayed on the edge of the event, didn't mingle much. I left early. I didn't want to risk being the center of whispered conversations or awkward glances. I knew the people who still spoke to me did so with caution, careful not to mention certain names or stir up old drama. I couldn't blame them. Back home, the quiet became my normal. I didn't fill it with noise. I let it sit. Let it echo. There's something about losing people you love that forces you to reflect. Honestly, brutally. I started journaling. Not to preserve the memories, but to process them. Writing it all down made me see things clearer than I ever had in the moment. Emily was never the villain. Neither was Jake. And as much as I didn't want to admit it, I wasn't either. We were 3 people caught in the worst version of timing and trust. The more I wrote, the more I stopped romanticizing what happened. Yes, there were feelings. Yes, there was connection. But there was also fear, resentment, and guilt. What Emily and I had wasn't built on something solid. It was built on cracks we refused to face until it was too late. Eventually, I stopped writing about them. Their names showed up less and less. Until one day, I wrote a journal entry and realized it didn't mention either of them. That was the first time I felt free from the weight. I poured myself into other parts of my life. Started volunteering. Picked up new projects. Focused on people who still chose to be in my life despite the storm I dragged through it. I wasn't trying to distract myself, I just didn't want to waste the lesson. There was a moment, late one night, where I caught myself smiling at a memory that had nothing to do with them. It wasn't big or important, just a random thought. But I laughed to myself and realized I hadn't done that in a long time. That's how healing sneaks in, quietly, without permission, until it's just there, filling space you thought would stay empty forever. Months turned into a year. Emily never messaged again. I didn't look her up. She became a closed chapter. Not erased, just finished. I stopped needing answers from her. Stopped wondering what if. She had her path. I had mine. And Jake? I still thought about him, sometimes. Usually, when something reminded me of the old days. A movie we used to quote. A place we used to hang out. But those memories weren't sharp anymore. They didn't cut. They just floated by. One afternoon, I ran into one of our old friends, David. We hadn't talked in a while, but it wasn't weird. He was easygoing like that. We caught up, kept it light, until he said, "You know Jake's engaged again, right?" I nodded. Said I'd heard. "He's good now," David said. "Happy. Different. More grounded." I was glad to hear it. "Really?" David paused, then said, He doesn't talk about any of that anymore. I think he's just left it all behind. I smiled and said, he should. And I meant it. That conversation stuck with me. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed something I needed to hear. Jake had moved forward. He didn't hold on to it like I feared he might. He wasn't carrying it like a wound. He had every right to hate me, but he chose to move on instead. That told me more about who he was than any message ever could. I don't know if I'll ever run into him again. And if I do, I don't expect anything. Maybe a nod. Maybe not even that. But I hope he's genuinely happy. I hope he gets everything he wanted with someone who makes him feel safe. As for me, I've changed too. Not in a dramatic way. Not overnight. But enough to notice. I'm more careful with people's trust now. More aware of how fragile it is. I don't blur lines. I don't entertain what I can't carry. I'm clearer with my intentions. More honest with myself when something feels wrong. I still believe in love. That surprised me, honestly. For a while, I didn't. For a while, I thought I'd ruined that part of myself. But slowly, piece by piece, I realized love isn't the enemy. What destroys love is fear, insecurity, silence. And I let all of those things live between us for too long. One day, I met someone. It wasn't like before. No spark overload, no chaotic rush. Just a quiet connection that grew with time. We talked. A lot. About everything. I told her my story eventually, not right away, but when it made sense. I didn't tell it for sympathy. I told it because I didn't want to build anything on half-truths again. She listened. Asked questions. Didn't flinch. She told me, we've all messed up. The important thing is whether we learned anything. And I had. I learned that loyalty isn't about resisting temptation. It's about being honest the moment things start to shift. I learned that silence is its own betrayal. That intentions matter, but actions matter more. I learned that people will disappoint you, and you'll disappoint them. But healing is possible when you own your part. We're still taking things slow. I'm not rushing anything. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm building something with a clean slate. No ghosts. No shadows. Just presence. Sometimes I wonder how different things could have been if I had made different choices. But regret is a loop with no exit. I don't live there anymore. I live in the present. And in the present, I'm okay. Maybe not perfect. Maybe not completely whole. But okay. This story isn't a love story. Not really. It's a story about mistakes. About timing. About the weight of trust and the cost of breaking it. It's about what happens when emotions override judgment and what's left when the dust settles. I won't ever tell Jake this, but he taught me something, maybe the most important thing. That some losses don't make you weaker. They make you real. Because once you've faced the worst parts of yourself, you stop running from them. You start rebuilding. And that's what I've been doing ever since. Quietly. Day by day. Brick by brick. Not to forget what happened, but to make sure it never happens again.